as parents. We don't want to talk about this. We don't want to say, you know what, my child's got a problem with drugs. He needs help. We feel it's something to be ashamed of. We feel it's something to be embarrassed about. But it's not. It affects so many people out there today, especially in South Africa. I mean, so many homes. I mean, almost every home has one individual that's got a problem with substance, and if it's not hard narcotics like what I was addicted to, it's normal painkillers that you find in the pharmacy. It's all kinds of drugs that's addicted today.
Welcome to the Global Indian Podcast, home to the greatest conversations and the official platform for people of Indian origin. Yes, let's face it, we are everywhere. Thank you for clicking the link and thank you for finding out more about this incredible conversation. Now, on our weekly show, we plunge into the human experience of being a person of Indian origin, take a second look at the countries we now call home, and tackle the big conversations we need to have. In this episode, I travel all the way down to South Africa to meet with Gerald, a member of Narcotics Anonymous. Now, Gerald reached out to us via our website to share his story of a situation he felt the global community needs to know more about, and it is drug addiction. Now, the facts are startling. Up to 60% of crime in South Africa is drug related, and within the community it is an issue that is ravaging its way across, no matter of any religion that somebody belongs to. But yet the silence is deafening. Nobody is speaking about this, and so Gerald was frustrated. He said, we need to change this. What you hear soon is his voice and the issues that matter to him most, from dealing with crack cocaine addiction to how he sees our society and our community needs to work closer together. Now, if you like what we do, it couldn't be easier to support. All we need to simply do is share, like, and subscribe, because with your help, we get to build the world's living encyclopedia of people just like us. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our dear sponsors and supporters, many of which you will listen to quite soon. I hope you enjoy this remarkable and much needed conversation.
Hello, my name is Daniel Traça and I'm Dean of Nova School of Business and Economics in Carcavelos, Portugal, one of Europe's leading business schools. I'm proud to be of Indian origin, and I invite you to discover these podcasts, which will look to redefine the impact that Indians and their descendants are doing all over the world. In behalf of Nova School of Business and Economics, I wish you a great 2021.
My name is Chitra Stern, and I am a proud Global Indian Ambassador and CEO of Martinal Resorts and Martinal Residences. We pride ourselves on the journeys that define a community, and our developments bring people together. Did you know that over 70,000 people just like us call Portugal home? The Global Indian journey has brought people together in a meaningful way, and on behalf of all of us at Martinal, we want to thank you for joining us in these remarkable conversations. We look forward to seeing you here in Lisbon post-COVID. Have a great day.
And just move. Get up 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 and just.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to Global Indian Podcast Series. Thanks for the opportunity, Rajan. I decided to go along with this podcast because I want all the listeners and everyone out there to know about what's going on in South Africa with regards to drugs and how really serious this problem has become, and how we as a community have now turned a blind eye towards it, and nothing much is really being done about the situation. The situation is quite out of hand at the moment. I mean, 60% of the crime in this country is linked to drug addiction. And, one every 3 out of 15 people have a problem with narcotics. So me, myself, I'm a recovering drug addict. I've been clean from the 28th of May, 2013. I'm almost 8 years clean now. But I've also come from a trying, lifestyle surrounded with drugs. I started using at a young age, so I know the effects of what drugs can do to someone. But in this country, we're faced with people in the government and stuff that are not really doing enough to try and curb the problem with drugs, and it's left to the individual and people in various communities to come together and try and do whatever it takes, to fix this problem. And I feel by me doing this podcast, I can get more info out there and, to some of the listeners to let them know about the seriousness of this, because it's affecting everyone. And most of the people that it's affecting, is amongst our Indian origin community. And we have a lot of misconceptions, as an Indian community, where we believe that, we should not talk about this problem. This problem shouldn't be spoken about publicly. And we kind of keep this problem within closed doors. And I'm here, just to let people know that this is the wrong way of looking at things. And, the misconceptions that it's, it's some kind of a witchcrafted thing, or it's some kind of, a spiritual problem where prayer will fix it and all kinds of other things will fix. I've tried everything out there. And I'm here to tell your listeners that, I've been an addict for many years now, and I've used drugs, and I've tried everything possible to stop using drugs, but nothing worked for me,
Let's go right back to the beginning then, Gerald. So,
all right.
Sure. You've been recovered, obviously, with the help of Narcotics Anonymous. You've been 8 years sober. When did you start into this world? Like, what was it like for you growing up?
For me, growing up, I basically came from a good family, we weren't, I would say, we were poor, but we had everything we needed. I mean, my parents provided whatever we needed. Growing up, it was tough, and that's why, I feel that drug addiction affects a lot of people in poor communities. So me, myself, coming from a poor community, I was one of the guys that was introduced to drugs. At that time, I didn't think much of it. I mean, obviously, people spoke about it in school, the effects of addiction and how you should not do drugs. But no one, actually really thinks about it hard enough to say that, hey, this could be me. This could happen to me. I should really, stay away from it. And I was one of those guys that took it for granted. So I experimented with drugs from a young age in school. It started from high school. It went on to, right up till my matric years and stuff. But it helped me to deal with a lot of stuff. I mean, when I used my first drug, it basically did things for me that I could not really do for myself. I didn't have the courage to speak. I was a very shy person in school. So I looked at it as a cure, for my lifestyle. And when I got to, too much of it, it started to, in the beginning, most people enjoy drugs. I mean, I was one of those guys, I enjoyed the effects of it. It was fun.
What was your first drug? What was your almost gateway?
Okay, my first drug is what we generally call, the gateway drug, and that was marijuana, dagga, Zol in South Africa. It's widely available. I mean, it's legal now in this country, so it's widely available to anyone, whoever wants it. So it started off with marijuana, and I thought that, what, everyone does it, so what the heck, there's no big deal about it. But I didn't realize at that point in time that, eventually, for an addict, and when you become an addict, one drug always leads to another until eventually, you go on to harder drugs. So it started from marijuana. Eventually, it went on to mandrax. And from the smoking drugs, it led to taking the pill form drugs, which was like ecstasy and stuff, which was in nightclubs and stuff like that. And it was I still felt it was a bit controlled because we would only do it on weekends whenever we could go into a club. But we started using it more frequently, in our homes and stuff, at house parties and stuff. So it started to become progressive. And at that stage in my life, I didn't realize how progressive drugs really were. And it is a progressive disease. And I didn't even know about the disease concept back then, but only now I found out that, quite a couple of years back, that drug addiction is actually a disease. It's medically proven as a disease. And I only found that out because when I really got deep into it, I couldn't stop no matter how hard I tried. I tried to put down the drug so many times on my own will, but for some reason, I couldn't succeed. It was a painful time in my life because, when I finally got addicted to crack cocaine, I think that was a stage in my life where everything just fell apart because now I had found and I came across a drug that was so addictive, that was so cunning and so powerful that I would do anything for it, anything. You know, I would rob my loved ones, I would steal from them. I'd have no conscience whatsoever. I just became this person that I never thought I would become, you know, this evil person that walked around, just whoever came across me, you know, lost something. You know, it was a painful time. I mean, and most of the time, my family and my loved ones had to deal with all of this. You know, I put them through a lot of stress. You know, it was a trying time. You know, my parents were earning money to provide, you know, food for us. And I didn't really care what the money was for. I would steal it just to support my habit, you know.
Wow. So then,
Yeah.
what was that moment? Like, how bad did it get then? How bad is bad that you're discussing?
You know, it really got bad, Rajan, to an extent where I was kicked out of home. My family couldn't tolerate me no more. I mean, they did their best. I mean, you know, they tried their best. They tried so many ways to help me. I mean, I came from a Christian home, and they would call pastors from all over the country that used to come to South Africa, powerful people, you know, of God. And they would come and pray for me and, you know, all kinds of things, and try and cast out demons and all kinds of things. Because obviously I don't blame them. You know, my parents didn't know what this was all about. They thought it was some spiritual problem that I was faced with. So they would invite all these people and try and help me. They tried to put me into a rehabilitation center, but I wasn't ready for it at that point in time in my life. So I didn't really commit to it. So I came out, I wasted all their money, you know, and I came out and I carried on using, and they didn't know what to do. I mean, they were baffled themselves, just like me. I was so baffled at why I couldn't stop. They were baffled as well why I couldn't stop, you know. And it was a really trying time because I gave my family a lot of, you know, pain and grief, because I robbed them of their peace and their joy. They were too afraid to go anywhere and leave the house unattended to, because they were afraid I was going to steal something, you know. And it was a very, very painful time. I remember my siblings, you know, I could see the tears in their eyes whenever I walked home. To see me in that state, you know, it wasn't good to see me in that state, because I became a totally different person. They had lost a brother. You know, my parents had lost their son. Although they were seeing me physically, but they could see I wasn't the same person. I wasn't their son. So they didn't know who I was. I was some kind of a stranger just walking in at home, and just for a bed to sleep at night and a plate of food. That's basically what it was. And as time went by, you know, I started to get involved with the law. I was, you know, I would get caught for drug possession and all kinds of petty crime. There were numerous times where I was locked up, and, you know, I was in prison. I never thought I would be a person to be sitting behind bars, you know, in prison. But here I was sitting in jail for the whole weekend, and thinking about, how did I end up here? How did I end up living this life that has now brought me into a prison cell? You know, and I used to ask myself all these questions whenever I was alone in these prison cells, between these walls, because it really troubled me. And it reached a stage where I would go down on my knees and I would plead with God, and I'd say, God, if you really exist, I mean, why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to suffer the way that I'm suffering, while everyone out there is living a normal life? Everyone out there wakes up in the morning, goes to work, does their normal things. But here I am, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I'm thinking about is a drug, because the cravings is so strong and so intense that I can't resist myself, you know. And that was a really, really painful time in my life, because I reached a place in my life where my life was going nowhere. I just reached a dead end. I couldn't go any further. You know, I couldn't succeed at anything. Anything that I tried, any job that I started, I couldn't complete.
What was that moment of change for you then? What happened?
The moment of change for me was, it was a series of events that took place. So all of these events combined, when I finally got kicked out of home, and I had nowhere to go, and it was either sleep on the streets, or, you know, go to a relative's place and explain them what my problem is. And you know, a relative took me in, and they tried to keep me, you know, and they tried to help me out. But when they really saw how bad my problem was, because they caught me using in their toilets, and they didn't like that, because they had kids and stuff. And obviously, you know, no one wants to put up with that stuff. And I was kicked out of there. You know, I was kicked out of there and I had nowhere to go again. And I pleaded with my parents. I pleaded to them, please, just one more chance. I can't sleep on the streets. I won't survive. Just one more chance. And eventually they took me in and they gave me a last chance and they put me into a rehabilitation center. And I knew this was my last straw. I knew this was my last chance now to turn around and to do the right thing. So I stayed there in the rehab for like 21 days and I did my best. I did my best. I would read my Bible. I would try and pray. I would do all the good things, the right things, the spiritual stuff, And that's when I heard about Narcotics Anonymous. And, I never thought that the program will work, but it's actually a spiritual program. And I got involved. And when I got involved, I was offered the opportunity to do service, to help other addicts that have the same problem as me. And that's what they've given me, and by giving me this opportunity, I actually found some value that came out of it. It actually strengthened my life. It made me stronger in my personal recovery, because here I was now, being that addict that I used to be, that actually gave up on life. And, I actually tried committing suicide and ending my life at one stage, because that's how bad it had become. And here I was now given an opportunity to help other people, other addicts that have gone through the same pain and problems as me, and they say only one addict can best understand another addict. And I agree with that, because when I was using, I had so many people come up to me and tell me, Gerald, why are you using drugs? Why don't you just stop? Just say no. It's easier said than done. I've seen these things, but whenever I did try to say no, or I did try to stop, it wasn't possible. It's difficult to understand, but only another addict would understand it. And I found this working, because whenever I shared my stuff with another addict, that person would understand exactly where I was and what I was trying to achieve and what my troubles were, and what I was trying to escape whenever I used drugs. And that's where the help really came. It was just about one addict helping another. And, it's an awesome program, spiritual program. They really, strengthened me in all areas of my life. I've become a person that I never thought I would become, I never thought that one day I would be drug-free. I actually thought that I was going to die an addict, because that's the way it was looking. I felt that I could never stop using drugs. I thought there was no solution. There was no other way.
When you look back at it, what do you think was the cause of it then? Because obviously it's a lot easier now looking back in hindsight,
Yes.
almost like a cinema screen and looking over your shoulder. What do you think was the main cause for that addiction for you?
I think the cause for me was the fact that, I wouldn't blame it all on my background. Like, I did come from a poor home. Yes, I didn't have everything. I had the essentials, but, I was looking for more. I would see kids in school with fancy clothes and stuff, and I wanted that. So I was looking for some form of acceptance. I remember when I moved from one school to another, it was a huge change for me, because it was a different area from where I moved to. And I had to make new friends. And I think the biggest problem for me was making friends in a different area, because they looked at me like some kind of basically an outcast. Because here I was, from a totally different area now. Here's this new guy. And, and they would tease me and keep all funny names for me and stuff. And I was trying to fit in. I was trying to, go through all of this stuff and all of these challenges that we face in everyday life with people of all kinds of origins and stuff. And it was, at that young age, when I got into high school, it was hard for me. But when I was introduced to a substance, and, that's why we take it for granted, but drugs is so readily available today in schools, in everywhere you go, there's drugs. But, when we face these issues, we need to have life skills. We need to be learning stuff on how to cope with everyday life without using substances. And that's something that I didn't have. So when I finally picked up my first drug, it helped me to, find that acceptance, to become that person that I was going to be liked. I really wanted to be liked by,
So
my peers and stuff.
It was almost like a social lubricant then for you, like a form of escape.
That's exactly what it was. Yes, it was a social lubricant, and it helped me to, become more sociable and to come out of myself and to be happy with who I was and to find that confidence, in myself, because I had a very low self-esteem problem. That was one of my issues. And whenever I took drugs, I felt good about myself. I felt I could do anything, but I didn't know that eventually one day, I would become an addict. I didn't realize
what do you think
drugs.
I was gonna say, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about drug abuse? Because did your parents know that it was drugs at the beginning, or did they just think, you're going through a crisis or an issue at school or college or university? Like, what was the misconceptions people had?
Well, at that time, the misconception was, like you said, my parents at that stage, they didn't really know what I was going through. So they thought it was, stress, it was school-related stress, which it was. But, that's what led me into using drugs. And I think some of the misconceptions is that, especially when you're in your teenage years, we take it for granted and we feel now, he's a teenager now. He tends to isolate, lock himself up in the room and stuff. And I was one of those persons, but that wasn't the reason why I locked myself up in the room. I locked myself up in the room so I could use and no one could see what I was doing. So I lived a very private life. And whenever I got home, I wouldn't share anything about, my challenges in the day and stuff that happened in school. Always kept things inside. And that was my biggest issue, I think. And I think the misconception about that there is that, a lot of parents and a lot of people think that, they go into a state of denial and they don't want to believe that, hey, maybe my child does have a drug problem. Because my parents were in denial for a long time and the evidence was there, but they chose not to really dig into it. They were in denial, strong denial. I was also in denial. I reached a stage where I was in denial, believing that I was an addict. I thought, nah, I'm just okay. I can control this thing. I can handle this thing. I can put it down whenever I wanted to. But when it reached the time where I really wanted to, I couldn't. And eventually, it took a lot of time for my parents to really find out what was going on and to really see that, hey, my son has a drug problem, because it was staring them right in the face. They couldn't deny it any longer. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions, or one of the biggest problems in our Indian society or many other communities out there is denial. Denial is a huge factor. And we don't want to come out of our shell and talk about this as a community, as parents. We don't want to talk about this. We don't want to say, you know what, my child's got a problem with drugs. He needs help. We feel it's something to be ashamed of. We feel it's something to be embarrassed about. But it's not. It affects so many people out there today, especially in South Africa. I mean, so many homes. I mean, almost every home has one individual that's got a problem with substance, and if it's not hard narcotics like what I was addicted to, it's normal painkillers that you find in the pharmacy. It's all kinds of drugs that's addictive today. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions, amongst our society and in our community that needs to be changed. If we're going to fix this and come together as a community and really find a solution to addiction, we need to come out our shell. We need to talk about this as a community, air our opinions, and help one another. That's the best way.
Do you think that there's enough mindset towards this? Because you're right. I think we look at alcoholism and it's now becoming a norm. People realize, okay, somebody's drinking too much. We need to do something, or they can see the changes in behavior. But when it comes to drug addiction, you're right. It's almost a very taboo thing. We if somebody has a drink in public, nobody says anything. If you roll up in public, it's almost seen as part of a hip hop video. It's almost normalizing that behavior. But then people forget that there's something a lot deeper. So as soon as you start doing things like crack cocaine, so what has to happen for society to be able to see that?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Rajan, because alcohol is something I started with, and everyone does alcohol, and no one looks at it as like, anything ashamed. They're not ashamed about it because it's socially acceptable. I mean, here's a substance that's socially acceptable. The moment you put on your TV, you see a bottle of drink. I mean, everybody does it. So there's this thing where, he drinks too much, or, it's not a problem. So everyone ignores it. But like for me as an addict, that's where it all starts off. My addictive personality also started off with alcohol. So it was alcohol and marijuana in the beginning. And alcohol actually is the scary part about it, because I'll tell you why. Like, I've got a lot of friends that, are alcoholics, like one of the guys you had in one of your podcasts. And I'll tell you something. It's like, alcohol makes you brave. You can do anything under the influence of alcohol. If someone offers you a drug, you'll be brave enough to try it. And if you're completely sober, you'll probably refuse it. But if someone comes to you and say, hey, try this out, this will make you sober instantly. And that's what happened to me. I was introduced to crack as a form of getting sober, so I could go home and no one would notice that I was drunk. And that's how I got involved with crack. That's what happens. That, people don't really look at drug addiction as much, but yet drug addiction is a bigger problem. It's a much bigger problem, because what I've noticed today in this day and age, now people start off with alcohol and eventually they go on to other substances. And I've seen that a lot now, and the most common form of substances is crack and cocaine. So I've
See,
spoken
that's
to a lot of
surprising.
my alcoholic friends.
That's massively surprising,
Oh yeah,
Gerald, because like for me, I would think that the biggest thing out there is marijuana. Obviously, it's there, but you don't think about
yeah,
how bad it can get. But the moment you start speaking about crack, cocaine, then almost you get these images that come to your mindset that these things have devastating impact. Do you think that the potency of drugs is also increasing? Do you think that's also potentially another issue? Because even things like marijuana, if you look at the marijuana in the 1960s, it would have been
oh
a
my
very
word.
different potency to where it is now.
Oh
Now
yeah,
we've got things like industrial strength to put down a horse, let alone a human
oh
being.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, Rajan, it's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and I just worry about our generations to come and, where we're currently in right now, because the strength of the drugs right now in the market is way worse than when I was using and when, even in my parents' time, because I see the effects. I mean, the guys tell me now, and, I hear stories because I am in contact with addicts that are still active because I'm trying to help people out. And they tell me the drugs that are on the market today. And today you get marijuana of different strengths and you get different flavors, different strains. And that's the thing, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. It's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I remember when I was using marijuana, we would smoke a lot. We could really smoke a lot. I mean, the pipe would go around the circle. If it was a bunch of like 10 guys, the pipe would go around the circle and everyone would just continue smoking and smoking and smoking. There weren't enough. But today, it's like, you just see one joint being passed around and everyone's goofed, and I've seen it. And that's a scary thing in our society today. It's really, really scary because we don't know what chemicals are going into these things these days. There's a lot of harmful chemicals in the drugs today. And it's becoming more and more harmful, more and more addictive, more and more dangerous.
Do you think so? When you hear countries are opening up, liberalizing laws on drugs, marijuana, for example, in South Africa, how do you feel
Yeah.
about that?
I really feel, personally, I get very emotional when I think about it because, being an addict, I know what this drug can do to people. I've seen a lot of people go into psychosis, and people think that, marijuana is actually, it's a natural herb, it's a natural substance. I mean, for the government to legalize it, it just goes to show how, how they're turning a blind eye against the effects and, the impact addiction has had on our country as a whole, because here we have a drug that, may seem like it's not lethal or may seem like it's not harmful, but yet this is what people start off with. And this is what grasps our kids. This is what our kids start indulging in, and it's not only a gateway drug. It's not only a drug that, gets you started onto harder drugs eventually and become an addict, but it's also a drug that you can go into psychosis. I've seen people that have smoked so much of weed that are now sitting in mental institutions because of it, because they've gone into a state of psychosis. But the problem is, the evidence is there, everything is there. I mean, we have a hospital here that has a lot of cases of it. So people are well aware of the effects of marijuana, but yet it's legalized.
But then
I can understand.
but at the same token, though, wouldn't you turn around and say, well, alcohol's legalized. People can drink alcohol. Alcohol causes much more deaths than marijuana has. Surely then at the same breath, you'd be saying, well, you should ban alcohol if you're going to ban marijuana. Like, what are your thoughts around there?
Well, exactly. The thing is with alcohol, it's been around for years now, and it's been legal and socially acceptable for many, many years, way before my time. So this has been done very recently. But, people, just like you said, now people look at alcohol and they say, hey, yeah, alcohol causes a lot more deaths, a lot more accidents, people behave differently. And it's so true. But to go back and undo that, it's a bit of a mission. But also like with marijuana as well now, what we basically saying to our youth is that, yeah, it's fine. You can smoke. You can go out there and smoke marijuana and you can drink. It's okay. But it's not okay. I mean, when we start doing these kind of things now, eventually now we end up in a different place. We end up in a place now where you enter into the dark zone, where you now open up yourself to a variety of other harder drugs. That's way worse than alcohol.
And that's because of the strength of the marijuana now is no way comparable to what it used to be.
Correct. 100% correct. So yeah, that's my concern. So yeah, well, unfortunately, we can't change the laws. Maybe we don't have the power to change the laws or whatever the case is, but we can come together and educate ourselves and educate our community about the effects of these drugs, and to try and, bring more awareness out there. And that's what I've been trying to do. And, that's why I've been doing a lot of service wherever I am, and, trying to reach out to addicts and families, and, trying to teach them and educate them about the effects of drugs.
What is the difficulty on your side? Because I know we spoke off air a while back, and you said some of your biggest issues is that you've dealt with addicts who have ended up committing suicide after a while.
Yeah. It's sad. So you help. I've had an opportunity to help a few people out, and and I've gotten quite close to them, and they've joined our program. They've stayed clean for a while, and in that short period of time, they managed to get back to their normal lifestyle, where they get a job, they start working, their marriages get fixed, and you start seeing them grow, and you start seeing them, becoming better people. And then what happens is, because of the lack of support and the lack of understanding, the person starts to believe that, hey, I'm fine. It's been a year now since I've used drugs. I'm actually normal now. I'm back to normal. And they don't understand the disease concept, that there's no cure for this disease, but it can be treated. So they go about living their normal life and forget about the program. And it's happened to a few guys. And it's sad, and I lost a good mate of mine that came into the program. I was his sponsor. I sponsored him for a while, and he passed away. I mean, he relapsed, he committed suicide. And here I was, blaming myself. I was like, maybe I could have done something more. I could have saved him. Now, I mean, here's his wife and his kids left without a father, left without a husband. And, I was really, really emotional at that point in time, because I kept blaming myself. But then I learned and I realized that no one else can save you. No one else can save an addict from suicide or any other, form of relapse, except the addict himself. So no matter what I did, no matter what I said to kind of help him, the decision and the choice is left to him. And that's what I learned, because end of the day, I had to make the decision for myself. Do I want to continue living this life? Do I want to throw my life away? Do I want to die at an early age? So I had the choice. I was given the opportunity. I was shown the solution. I had the solution right in front of me. They said to me, this is the program, 12 steps. I need to work these 12 steps, and I can recover on a daily basis. It's a daily reprieve. So I took the solution. I embraced it, but not everyone does. And that's the unfortunate thing. Some make it, some don't make it, but the recovery rate is really, really low at the moment.
Good. Well, I think that's a sobering note to end this on. Gerald, thank you very much for coming, and I thank you for being very open about this as well. Is there any final remarks that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I'd just like to say to the audience, thank you for listening. And also, if you do have a problem with drugs like I did, or if you know anyone in your family that has a problem with drugs, don't give up. There's still hope out there. There's lots of help out there. The important thing is you reach out, try and get as much information as you can, try and learn more about addiction, try and understand it. If you want to help someone that has the problem, try to get rid of all these misconceptions that we all have, and look at the problem as any other disease out there, like cancer and diabetes and all of that, because there is treatments, there's no cure, but you can recover from it. It's a daily reprieve. I mean, look at me, I'm almost 8 years clean now. There's people that's longer than me, that's 20 years, like 30 years clean. It's amazing. I mean, it's a worldwide fellowship. I mean, and it's a spiritual, you come here with a God of your own understanding. It's a spiritual program. We have Muslims, we have, Tamil, Hindi people, Christian people, all types of religions. And it's, you just come here with a God of your own understanding, spiritual program, and just work the 12 steps.
What a phenomenal conversation. I'm sure you agree. You can hear almost the pain coming off Gerald's voice when he speaks about some of the big issues at play. It's the fact that every single day he's going out there in society, trying to help those people who are dealing with addiction, and yet sometimes he's faced with a stone wall from silence from within the communities itself, a failure to acknowledge that actually this addiction is taking place in the first place. I suppose if there's anything that we can take away from this with the brutality in which a drug addiction is that we need to be able to spot the signs and also be wise enough to realize that we too have a strength and a power to make a difference. I really hope you enjoyed this session, and I look forward to reaching out to you next week where we plunge in to the human experience of being us. Until then, I hope all remains well. Stay safe for now.